this
question.
is not.
This is so stupid.
This is not like common behavior. You know, it's like this is classic stupidity with a capital S, where it's embarrassing to even have to be in a position to be like, yeah, well, they kind of have a point. And this is what they've done with everything, with tariffs, with deportation. And that's why I'm like, I'm done with you. I am done with this bullshit. It's like this amount of stupidity that you require people to debase themselves to defend your idiocy is enough. Look, I know that, you know, there's some MAGA memas or whatever. They're going to stand and ride or die forever. Fine, okay, yeah, you can have them. But, you know, for people out here who are actually have to follow this stuff for a living and have, you know, actual acquaintance with competence and with people who actually know what the hell they're doing, it's absurd. It's an attack on intellect itself.
The vanguard will be there, sir.
Now we have Saagar officially reaching his maximum cope crash out with Donald Trump. Gavin, is this the end of Saagar? Is he about to become a liberal?
I don't know about liberal, but it's definitely true that I think this marks a real shift. And we've covered stories like this before where Saagar has started to flirt with totally abandoning Trump, turning on MAGA. But I think it's fair to say that at this point, we can say that process has really begun in earnest. Like Saagar is seemingly at his wit's end. He's at the end of the rope. He's not going to defend the indefensible. And I think a lot of this honestly comes, you know, as a content creator, especially on YouTube, you have to look at the feedback, right? You have to see the way people are responding to the arguments you're making. I think that's less so the case on like cable news or something. It's kind of just like, you know, you speak into the void and then you're done. But on YouTube, you know, if you're Saagar and Enjeti, you're confronted every time you open the YouTube dashboard with all of the bitching and moaning and criticism. And he got a lot of it in the early weeks of the Trump administration for basically defending the indefensible, including even the, deportations, removals, trafficking of people like Mahmoud Khalil. Glenn Greenwald had to come into the Breaking Point studio and set him straight and be like, this actually is not how we do things in this country. This is deeply un-American in every sense. And I honestly do think that was a big turning point for Saagar. It's unfortunate that he had to hear it from Glenn and, you know, he wouldn't process it when it was Crystal telling him the exact same thing. But either way, I guess he really respects Glenn and views him as someone who, you know, can have the ability to change his mind or whatever. So that seemingly had an impact on Saagar. But I also just think, you know, he was like, I'm not gonna be the guy who just gets roasted in the comments every day for acting like a press secretary, for being like a professional propagandist and trying to spin this and, oh, this is actually good. This is actually smart. This is what the people voted for. Like, he's just done with that because there's nothing worth defending anymore.
That's probably true. I'll choose to believe he's really gotten into the vanguard and we've really been influencing his POV.
That's also possible.
Regularly.
That is possible.
Yeah, many people watch the vanguard.
To the argument that if you're making an omelet, you're gonna break a few eggs.
Yes.
If the omelet is reforming higher ed, yes, obviously the media is going to pick out a few examples of really bad process work from the Trump administration and blow them up into something that they're not. This actually is really bad.
No, yeah,
like,
exactly.
No
this
question.
Is not.
This is so stupid.
This is not like common behavior. You know, it's like this is classic stupidity with a capital S, where it's embarrassing to even have to be in a position to be like, yeah, well, they kind of have a point. And this is what they've done with everything, with tariffs, with deportation. And that's why I'm like, I'm done with you. I am done with this bullshit. It's like this amount of stupidity that you require people to debase themselves to defend your idiocy is enough. Look, I know that, you know, there's some MAGA memas or whatever. They're going to stand and ride or die forever. Fine. Okay. Yeah, you can have them. But, you know, for people out here who also actually have to follow.
Sorry to pause it already, but you know, I appreciate where Saagar's at. He's obviously a little bit late to this. I would say that if you were defending Trump in day one into his first administration, you had already thoroughly debased yourself, even before he got elected. But I guess better late than never.
What did Donald Trump accomplish in his first term at all? He completely bungled the COVID pandemic. Okay, he passed a tax cut for the rich. He campaigned on building a wall, which he didn't do. He campaigned on repealing and replacing Obamacare, which thank God he couldn't do. He did an extrajudicial assassination of Qasem Soleimani, got us out of the Iran deal. Does any of this shit sound positive to you guys? Did he do he did a brand new NAFTA that fucked over the American workers all over again. That was what he did in his first term. Not to mention stacking the Supreme Court, stacking every federal circuit judge, and clearing the way for abortions to be banned in the entirety of the fucking South in this country. So that's what he did in his first term. It was all corruption. It was all laziness. It was all fumbles and fuck ups. I don't know how Saagar was able to stay on this long, but I agree with you, Gavin. I'm glad he's off the train.
And you forgot Trump tried to end American democracy on his way out too. So there's that.
How could I forget?
All this stuff for a living and have, you know, actual acquaintance with competence and with people who actually know what the hell they're doing. It's absurd. It's an attack on intellect itself. You know, go ahead.
Well, I think what's interesting here is that we compare Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0 and say Trump 1.0 was more haphazard and they didn't have their ducks in a row. They hadn't spent 4 years preparing this detailed policy agenda that they could install immediately when a Republican president, whether it was Trump or DeSantis, was in office. I think what we're starting to see, whether it's the student deportations, this letter to Harvard, or the tariffs, is that actually they did plan directionally what they wanted to do. They planned who they wanted to put in place, but they just lack the know-how to execute.
Well, actually, it's a huge indictment. I've been thinking about this a lot. It's a massive indictment of Project 2025 and all of the projects that were ostensibly to professionalize the Trump administration.
Wait, Gavin, I thought there was no Project 2025.
It's just not happened at all. Congratulations, you had some executive orders that were ready to go on day one. Let's look at the actual result of your flagship product, Doge, $2 trillion to $1 trillion to $150 billion, which is the exact amount that we're going to increase the Pentagon budget. Okay, so you didn't cut a single dollar of federal spend. I'm judging you by what you say that you wanted to do. Doge, you failed. It's a complete failure. Elon is leaving soon, right? Literally, he has to because of this whole special
that may actually help, though. To be honest,
probably will.
If you let Russ Vought start, who is a highly competent bureaucrat.
So look, we're only 100 days in.
Highly competent
deportation.
Gavin, don't worry, okay? But you're gonna get it back on track, and a highly competent bureaucrat is gonna run Doge once they get Elon out of there. It's gonna be run by a highly competent bureaucrat.
And that's a funny thing about like a lot of populists, and I consider myself a populist, but it is true. It's like they hate bureaucrats, they hate the establishment until some fucking idiot, incompetent clown is in charge, and they're like, "Oh, but let's get back to the bureaucrats and the establishment." Come on, it's like, yeah, all right. This is what happens when you elect a total fucking fool that doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. But yeah, I mean, it's these are two people that are Republicans, Saagar and Emily, both pretty, unafraid to admit their conservative values through and through. We've criticized them both massively. I do think it's a big sign that folks like this, who again are just like, MAGA meemaws, but actually are paying attention. They actually are reading the news. They're like, yeah, this ain't it. This is a fucking embarrassment, not just for my party and my ideology, but for this fucking country.
And I think that Emily Jasinski kind of just nodding along in agreement with Saagar as he just goes and excoriates the entire MAGA movement, the entire Trump presidency, shows that a large swath of the Republican Party that actually wants to accomplish something, they are leaving Donald Trump. And that's noteworthy, right? Because Emily Jasinski is like a true conservative, guy. She is a very hardcore conservative. I mean, I've heard very nice lady, all of that stuff. But her and I got into it on Twitter like before the election because she was like, Tim Walz might be really good on the economy, but he's bad on trans people and pornography, so we can't support him. I was like, are you fucking kidding me, lady? Like, you're worried about pornography and trans children in sports more than you're worried about the lived conditions of everybody. That's how you know somebody is a for real conservative. They would much rather target LGBTQ kids than uplift the poverty line in America. And if she's sitting here being like, yeah, Donald Trump is a total fraud and failure, that is honestly, that's good for the left in the sense that Donald Trump's cratering popularity on the right is beneficial for us in the upcoming midterms.
Yeah, 100%. Let's hear some more of this because as you're also about to hear, this isn't all just coming from a place of morality. Some of their issues with Trump is that he's not as effectively fascist as they wish he was. So that's the other element to this.
Was saying.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, okay, yeah, I mean, I said this previously yesterday. The Bureau of Prisons validates gang members every day, every single day. The Bureau of Prisons has thousands of gang members in the United States penitentiary system and knows exactly what they look like and how they do. Tattoos and everything. Do they make mistakes? I'm sure they do, but I guarantee you it's a much more professional. So when they come out, they go, oh, we're sending these gang members to El Salvador. I'm like, oh, okay, it makes sense. It's U.S. Department of Justice. No, it's like, oh, complete bullshit.
Yeah.
The way that you guys did this.
Mahmoud
Autism
Khalil.
awareness tattoo. Mahmoud Khalil.
We all fucking told you that was going to happen, Saagar. Literally everybody, literally your own co-host sat across from you every single day for like 4 fucking years and was like, hey, if Donald Trump gets back into power, he's going to be way more brazen. He's going to violate the Constitution. He's going to feel a lot more secure in his second term because he's already stacked all these fucking circuit judges in the Supreme Court. He's only going to surround himself with the most ardent loyalists, and he is going to shred the Constitution. That was what Saagar was told every single fucking day.
Oh, we're going after the student criminals, right? I'm like, oh, okay. So the Hamilton Hall guy, right? No.
Yep.
The guy who handed out a flyer, or this lady who co-authored an op-ed, or the guy who's married to a lady who's related to someone in what?
Yeah.
Like, and that the tariffs. This fucking
and I think Mahmoud Khalil's wife is a fucking PhD holding bio researcher who is a fucking American citizen, and he had a permanent green card. What do you mean a relative was fucking?
I think that's what he's saying. Isn't he saying like that's why this is ridiculous?
Well, yeah, but he implied that she had a relative that was Hamas, which I've never heard before.
Did he?
Related to someone in what?
He was like related to somebody in Hamas. I was like,
I still think he's calling out the ridiculous.
No, for sure. But
like,
I just was debunking that.
Married
I didn't
to
know
a lady who's related to someone in what?
Yeah.
Like, and that the tariffs. This fucking formula.
It's the exact same thing.
Same
no, it's
bullshit.
truly the same
it's
thing.
the same as the first time around. I mean, I remember the census thing. This is the first thing. This is the first thing that pissed me off about the Trump administration. As people know,
The first thing.
the census currently counts illegal immigrants, which is insane, right? Insane.
Mhm.
Because it basically means that if you have enough illegals in your state, that you get more representation in Congress.
Woke.
What? And more electoral votes. Nonsense.
Yep.
Well, the administration had a plan in 2018 to basically change the census. It only costs U.S. citizens. Great. Awesome. Would have completely changed the electoral map. Well, they did it in such an incompetent way. The Supreme Court was like, we don't even
And also, can we just like tell everyone for a second why the census exists, right? It's so that the government can have an idea of where people live, how many people are in an area, right? How we can ideally effectively provide services to maximize those numbers. How much money do we need to allocate where? Oh, there's going to be, 8 million people in New York City. There's probably not 8 million people in New York City, but you know what I mean? And then there's going to be 2 million people in Atlanta, and then there's only going to be 300,000 people in St. Louis, right? Like we need to, allocate money that way. Like just because you don't count these motherfuckers doesn't mean they're not going to be there. It's kind of like the ostrich putting their head in the sand, pretending that they're not there. Like that's crazy.
Agree. But we are striking this down because you did it so stupidly.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, the 2020 election was stolen. I'm like, well, also, you can't do the basic paperwork.
Mhm.
The travel ban. How many travel bans do we have in 2017? Do you remember? Maybe 4?
Yeah,
5?
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
Actually, that's a really good
Yeah.
parallel.
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought about that
Yeah.
because it's so hard to like pull all of these different references out because there's literally like hundreds of them. That's actually a really good reference point.
Mhm.
And I think the difference really now that I'm thinking of it between 1.0 and 2.0 here is that 2.0, to use a somewhat violent metaphor, in 1.0, nobody knew where to aim.
Yeah.
In 2.0, everyone spent years figuring out exactly where to aim, but didn't train at shooting,
Mhm.
right? They weren't going to the range and they're not right on the target. They know exactly what target to shoot at, but they don't know how to hit the bullseye.
Mhm.
And that's what's happening in this administration and in ways that are probably undermining their ability to ultimately hit the target because people are going to pull them out of the range, right? Before they can figure out how to.
Yeah, and that's another great point from Emily. It's like, I think that's part of the reason why her and Saagar are as mad as they are. Because ultimately, assuming that Trump eventually is removed from office, assuming that democracy ultimately prevails in this country, which God, I hope it does. This whole debacle, the whole MAGA movement, it will do long-term damage to all of these goals that Saagar and Emily and everyone in MAGA claims to care about, right? The vibe shift against everything that Trump ran on and popularized will be immense. Like I said, it's going to be right back to, Obama-style wokeness. Immigration is not going to be something that's a huge issue, assuming that democracy prevails and the pendulum is able to swing the other way. Trump and his minions are doing grave damage to this entire ideological project because of their incompetence and because of the fact that they're so just blatantly stupid and unserious. So I think that's a big part of the reason why, Saagar and Emily are actually upset about this. Again, they do want to see mass deportations. They just want to see it done in the correct way, in a more legal way, in a way that actually follows a bit more of the process. And it's ironic, Zach, because, if that is what you want, then honestly, you probably should have voted for Joe Biden, because he was trying to force through a fascist right-wing border bill. He actually was deporting people through the legal process at a rate that, is greater than what Donald Trump has been able to accomplish at this point. But they were acting like he was an open borders guy, and that he was just, he was letting in this mass invasion and stuff. And now it's like, actually, let's go back to the process. Let's go back to the, real legal way to do this. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's such a great point. When you sign up for Donald Trump, you are signing up for the sledgehammer. And that's been something that has been pretty publicly discussed. Like, that's something that everybody understands. That's kind of been accepted. When people talk about Donald Trump and they talk about why they're attracted to him, it's because they want to bring a sledgehammer to the system, right? Not a scalpel. Okay. And these people would say, oh, well, like I heard Saagar say it a million times, all people want to destroy the system. They want to burn it all down. Like, what do you think that involves, dummy? Like, do you think it is surgical and clinical? You just spent 8 months talking about how all these people want to burn it down. These people want to just wreck the system. Like, yeah, dude, that means violating laws. That means doing away with bureaucracy. That means fucking ruining our reputation on a global stage. That means making the quality of life worse for regular Americans. That's what you cheerlead for every single fucking day. And you can't pretend you didn't know better. You can't pretend that you're surprised. You can't pretend that we didn't live through 4 fucking years of Donald Trump already, where he was defined by his massive incompetence. Sure, corruption. Sure, his, just bad behavior and his, bad manners and all that shit. That took up a lot of time too. But the number one thing that we took away was his massive incompetence. Okay. It was the fact that he could not repeal and replace Obamacare. Obamacare was so unpopular, you guys. And he had the votes. He had the Republican votes, but he pissed off John McCain so badly that right before the motherfucker croaked, he puts his thumb down Kristen Sinema style and says, nope, you're not repealing Obamacare. The people of Arizona rely on that, and I hate you so bad I'm not doing you any political favors. Also, my seat is safe. I'm going to die before I have to run for re-election. Like, that was the pivotal moment of the Donald Trump administration. We were like, he's not going to get anything done. And then the only thing that he did get done that anybody can say is positive at all is that he sent checks to people after the Democrats dared him to.
And he saved that, or he freed that one grandma who was falsely in jail for drugs or whatever.
Oh.
Remember?
I'm sure he did.
Alice or something.
He did have the one thing that we. What was that act called?
The
First step. Yeah, no, that you're right. That is
the best president for Black people of all time. I'm the next Martin Luther King. Remember when he said that? Or
remember when it's fucking crazy that that's a real quote. By the way, it almost sounds like you were making a joke right there.
That's the world we live in. It is genuinely crazy, but yeah, 100%. Anyway, that's most of what was worth reacting to from Breaking Points. Pretty interesting stuff. And I saw that, people on the Breaking Points subreddit, Zach, were actually, pointing out a similar thing. The Trump admin is so bad that Saagar has been forced to defend everything he hates. He was defending the financial markets against Trump's tariffs. He was even defending Harvard. That was pretty funny. I think it might have been in the same segment or a different one, but he was like, trust me, it brings me no pleasure to defend Harvard, but they're not doing anything wrong here, whatever. So pretty good stuff. And I really hope that this is indicative of the way a lot of Trump voters are feeling, not just the, intellectual ones, but also just normal people. I've seen some anecdotal evidence of that. Like I saw Azalea Banks, of all people, tweeting that she regretted voting for Trump. She was like, I think it's time us Trump voters admitted that we were wrong or something. And a lot of people in her replies were like, why the fuck did you even vote for him in the first place? But either way, I have seen some anecdotal evidence that some people are starting to be like, oh shit, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. But let's hope that actually translates into a nationwide mood of resistance and people not having this.
Yeah. And I think that there's a real distinction that we should make, that Gavin and I always make, but in case you're new around here and you are curious of what our tone is, if you are a regular person who does not make money off of espousing political views on the internet or anywhere else in publication, then I think we open arms and we welcome you with open arms and we say, come back to the fold. Like, yeah, you fucked up. That was wrong. That was stupid. We can't run the country like that. Clearly, you've seen what happens when we try and run the country like that. Now, we totally appreciate and understand a lot of your concerns when they come to the economy and when they come to grocery store prices and all of that jazz. Come on, let's hear some real legitimate solutions that we could try and accomplish, like Bernie Sanders really putting that message central to his oligarchy tour, AOC, Tim Walz. These are guys that we can point to as a way of saying your instinct that something was wrong with the country and the way that things were balanced is correct. However, your solution, so bad, so nefarious, pernicious, right? Really offensive to a lot of people. You can still coach somebody away from being a swing voter that was like, man, I really just thought grocery prices would come down. I fucked up, you know? But you can't win back as a Charlie Kirk. You can't win back a Tim Pool. You can't win back some fucking idiot piece of shit that's paid to disagree with you and make our country shittier. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I will rag on Saagar. I'll dunk on Saagar. I'll come after Emily Jasinski or anybody who gets a check to say this swill. But when it comes to regular folks that you run into in your real life, try validating some of their concerns that aren't heinous, right? That aren't, you know, vitriolic towards some minority group. Talk about grocery prices, talk about how it's really fucking expensive in this country, talk about the rent, right? And then be like, you know what? This guy, Bernie Sanders, has a really legitimate solution for that. This girl, this woman, AOC, she's got a real solution to this. You know what I mean?
You can also point out how Donald Trump doesn't even deliver on the things he claims to care about and that those voters actually probably do care about, like free speech, for example. Like a lot of Trump voters, they actually do care about free speech. They actually do want to live in a society where censorship is not a thing. And some of them got tricked into voting for the Republicans because of that. Well, now it's pretty easy to disprove the fact that the Republican Party gives a single fuck about free speech. I mean, look at Donald Trump and the way that he's literally deporting people whose speech he doesn't approve of. It doesn't get any more fascist. It doesn't get any more censorious than that. And I think a lot of people, you know, you can explain that stuff to them and it will make sense to them if you explain it in a way that's not like insulting to their intelligence or like condescending or sounds like woke scolding, right? You can have these conversations, you can have these breakthroughs, and hopefully people wisen up and realize that, oh shit, I don't actually want to live in an authoritarian fascist country.
Yeah.
Look out the door if you hear an ambulance. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there.